If you or somebody you know is getting started in content creation and they're looking for that perfect camera to get started with, I have a list of 7 of my favorite cameras under $1,000 that you can get right now to get started. Check it out. So you're probably thinking to yourself, I need to get me one of these nice big beefy cameras or this guy to create content. Well, you might want to work your way up to something like this. More often than not, I get the question, what camera should I get started with? Something that doesn't break the bank. Now, all of these cameras that I'm going to recommend, for the most part, have 2 major things in common. One is clean HDMI out. So if you plug your particular camera out of this list into a capture card to your computer, you're going to have yourself a really good webcam. There's only one camera that won't have clean HDMI out, and I'll tell you about that later. But for the most part, each of these cameras are easy to use. They're under $1,000. They have clean HDMI out. Image is really good. Autofocus is solid, and it can scale with you. So as you grow as a creator, you're going to have use of this camera for a really, really long time. So those are the main criteria for my recommendations for these particular cameras. And I want to hear from you. What kind of content are you looking to create, and which of these cameras fits your needs the most? Leave it in the comment section below. Let's start with number 1. The first camera I recommend is the Sony ZV-1 Mark II. There are a few features that I really like about the Sony ZV-1 Mark II. First and foremost, it's just easy to use right out of the box. Once you open it, put the battery in, it'll walk you through some menu settings and stuff. Once you get those all dialed in, you're pretty much ready to get started. There's only a couple of buttons that you really need to know. One is just the record button. That's basically it. And it just does the job. It has a 3-inch flip screen. It has a 1-inch sensor. Like most of the other cameras that I'm going to recommend, it has an 18 to 50 millimeter zoom lens. So whether you're doing portrait photography, some video from a distance, or you're vlogging, holding the camera up against yourself and recording yourself, it's just a very versatile lens. You have an aperture of 1.8 to 4.0, which basically means that you're going to have that really nice shallow depth of field up close, but you're also going to have some really sharp images as well. It has eye auto tracking, so great autofocus, and Sony, for the most part, has been known for really good autofocus. Whether you're filming yourself or you're going to be filming somebody else, all you basically have to do is just tap whatever you're going to focus on, and it just does the job. It's really that simple. You have a built-in microphone up top, so it'll capture the audio really well, but you also have a hot shoe mount for your Sony ZV-1 shotgun mic, or you can always use the 3.5 millimeter jack, where you're going to be able to plug in your own external microphone, and you'll be able to get even better audio, which I'd highly recommend, because the microphone up top, while it's really good, it doesn't beat a shotgun mic. It is a 4K camera, so you're going to have a really nice, sharp image, high quality, high resolution. You can't go wrong with that. Also, this camera can capture 4K 120 frames a second for that ooey gooey, oh so nice cinematic slow-mo footage. Battery life is where I struggle with this particular camera, at least with the first iteration of it. It looks like the second iteration isn't that far off from that. That's the one thing that bugs me about these particular cameras. Now, you can always buy extra batteries, and it's worth having. You're always going to have extra camera batteries anyway. Regardless of what camera you have, for both of these cameras, I have 6 batteries. And those are the batteries I roll with all day, every day. One of my favorite features of this particular camera is the clean HDMI out. So if you're using your camera for filming and vlogging and doing all that stuff, that's great. But if you can use your camera as a webcam, that's even better. So this particular camera that I'm sitting at right now is not my traditional webcam. It is my mirrorless camera that I'm plugging in via a capture card and then capturing the image. So that's the reason why the image looks so sharp and looks so good. The same can be done with the Sony ZV-1 Mark II. The Sony ZV-1 can be found on Amazon right now for $790. It's a really good deal for someone who's getting started for the first time. My recommendation, if you're going to pick up the Sony ZV-1 Mark II, is just get the base kit, buy some additional batteries, and then get an SD card, slap it in there, and start recording, and really see what you create from there. So you're going to find in my particular list that the Sony ZV series is the majority of the list. So we just started off with the Sony ZV-1 Mark II. The next camera I'm going to recommend is the Sony ZV-1F. Now the difference between the two cameras is that the Sony ZV-1 Mark II has a zoom lens of 18 to 50 f1.8 to 4.0. So that gives you a really dynamic camera where you can shoot vlogs, and then you can also do some cinematic stuff, and you can zoom in and you can capture images from further away. The Sony ZV-1F is essentially just a vlog camera. That ultra wide 20mm lens is a fixed lens. You're not going to be shooting a whole lot of cinematic stuff. You might be able to, but for the most part, it's a vlogging camera. The price is definitely going to reflect that. With the Sony ZV-1 Mark II being at $790, this camera, the Sony ZV-1F, is almost half of that at $398. It's essentially the same camera. The only difference is that lens and the price tag. If you were interested in the Sony ZV-1 Mark II and you were only going to be vlogging, the Sony ZV-1F is definitely the camera for you. Another thing that you're going to find is that you actually have two color options. You have the black and you have the white. I'm used to black cameras, so I'm going to suggest getting the black camera. But if you feel fancy, get yourself the white one. It's pretty nice. You can get it on Amazon for $398, and there's a Cyber Monday deal on this as of right now. I don't know what the price is going to be tomorrow, but I can't imagine it being that much more expensive. So next up on the list is the Sony ZV-E10. So the difference between the Sony ZV-E10 and the Sony ZV-1 series is that the Sony ZV-E10 is an interchangeable lens system. So meaning that the other two bodies, those lenses are built into the camera. You can't remove them, you can't swap them out. This one gives you the freedom and the flexibility to swap out lenses as you see fit. Now, personally, if you are on a budget, this camera probably would not make the list. So where I see the Sony ZV-E10 in this particular list is mostly for users who have a creative bandwidth that spans beyond just vlogging. Maybe they want to do some cinematic work. They might want to do some photography. So that means that they're going to have a wide variety of lenses and lens options so that they can capture the images the way that they see it in their heads. So it might mean you need a 16mm, 20mm, 30mm, 50mm, 85, a 16 to 55. You won't be able to do that with a Sony ZV-1 or a 1F. You need something that gives you the interchangeable lens option, like the Sony ZV-E10. It has a 24 megapixel APS-C sensor, 4K, oversampled from 6K, so it's an even better, sharper image. Would you notice the difference between the APS-C crop sensor and the 1-inch sensor? Yes and no. Most likely not, because for the most part, the image is generally going to look pretty good. But it's when you get into low light or dark situations where the APS-C sensor is going to definitely stand out above the 1-inch sensor. At $598 for just the body alone, it's a good buy. But if you get the one with the 16 to 50mm lens, it's $685. If you get the content creator kit, now you're looking at $994. That's not including tax. So once you include tax, this puts you over by $1,000. But you have the camera, an SD card, a shotgun mic, and you also have the selfie stick feature with the buttons and all that fun stuff. Do I think it's absolutely necessary? I don't. At this particular price point, I think there are better cameras out there that you can bundle together with all these other features. But then again, the Sony ZV series is built for beginners and even creators who don't want to fumble with settings. They just want to hit record and get their content out. So now we're done with the Sony ZV series, and I want to talk about the next camera on the list, which is the Canon R50. The Canon R50 holds a special place in my heart because of its predecessor, the Canon M50. Now, the Canon M50 for the longest time was essentially the gold standard when it came to low-budget versatile cameras for beginners. Anytime that a friend would ask what's a good camera to use for getting started, it was the Canon M50 Mark II. The reason why was it had a great image, it had great autofocus, it did 4K, it did 1080p. It also included clean HDMI out. So you could basically use that camera for a lot of different use cases. So it was the Canon M50. Also, it was a really low budget camera. It was an interchangeable system, so you could basically grab any lens that was a native lens to that, slap it on, and you're off to the races. The Canon R50 is no different. It's essentially that same exact winning formula, but in a modern R series body. You take this particular body and you add in the Canon RF 16mm f2.8 lens and you're set. The camera will just work. Once you dial in your base settings, all you have to do is just hit record and voila, you have a really good image. Now, in terms of price, for the body alone, you're looking at $599. You add in the 16mm lens for $249. Your final price tag is something like $848. So still under $900 for a really solid vlogging camera. Now, I really believe that the Canon R50 and the Sony ZV-E10, and when you look at them side by side, the features are almost identical. You're just basically asking yourself, do I want to buy a Sony camera or do I want to buy a Canon camera? Choice is yours. I really feel like they're both about the same. I personally would go with the Canon R50 because I've personally had better experiences with it, and I believe that the battery life is better on the Canon R50 than it is on the Sony ZV series. A couple of major features on this particular camera: you have an APS-C sensor just like the ZV-E10, you have interchangeable lenses, you have great autofocus, you also have clean HDMI out, you can also plug it in via USB and still use it as a webcam that way as well. It shoots in 4K and it has a decent battery life. You can also find the Canon R50 on Amazon using the links below. Next up, we have the Osmo Pocket 3. Now, this particular camera it should be in a class in its own because the other cameras on the list were just that. They were just cameras. Now, if you're doing handheld and you're doing vlogging, there's some in-body stabilization built into those cameras and they do a decent job. But imagine when you put those cameras on a gimbal, now you have really steady, smooth shots, but that means you have to buy a gimbal. The DJI Osmo Pocket 3, that is a camera with a gimbal built into it. It's pretty phenomenal. What's interesting about the DJI Osmo Pocket 3 is that it has the same 1-inch sensor as the ZV-1 and the ZV-1F. So the image is going to be just as sharp, just as bright, and just as pretty as those other cameras. Here's the thing though, when it comes to ease of use, I don't think there's another camera that's as easy as the Osmo Pocket 3. You just flip the screen and it automatically turns on, the gimbal stabilizes, and you're ready to record. It takes next to no time at all to get started. And that's something that I really like about this particular camera. When it comes to battery life, the battery life on it is decent, but one simple way that you can extend the battery life is with the battery grip that it comes with. It comes with an expansion where it adds an extra 40 minutes of battery life to the battery just with the added grip extension, which is really, really nifty. It also has a stand with it, so you can actually just stand it up wherever you need it to be, and just with a simple gesture, you can get the camera to follow you wherever you move. That is so nice. It doesn't end there. The DJI Osmo Pocket 3 Creator Combo also comes with a wireless lavalier microphone. So you just clip it onto yourself and it's going to pick up your audio no matter how far away you are from the camera or how close you are from the camera. I think it's the all-in-one package. The other cameras are great, don't get me wrong, but they don't come with a wireless microphone. Who would have thought to add a wireless microphone with a camera? Something else that's really interesting about this particular camera is that it also shoots 4K 120 frames a second, which means you're going to have some sick slow-mo. This camera is going to do a lot of the things that you want it to do and then some. One of my favorite features of the DJI Osmo Pocket in the previous iterations was the quick shots, where it will do a lot of the creative motions for you and it just clips all that stuff together and creates a really nice highlight reel. It's so cool. This particular camera has a 2-inch touchscreen. It's a little bit smaller than the 3-inch touchscreen that you would find in the Sony ZV series. Autofocus on this thing is sharp. It also includes a DJI Mimo app, which allows for it to do some really cool additional things like quick shots like I was talking about. If there was any camera to suggest right now, it'd be the DJI Osmo Pocket 3, hands down. One thing that you do need to know is that you will not have clean HDMI out. As of right now, as far as I could tell, you can't just plug this into a computer and automatically use it as a webcam. If you did have that ability, game over. Done. I would buy 2 or 3 of these. The DJI Osmo Pocket 3 Creator Combo comes in at $669.99 and can be found in the link in the description section below. Next up is the DJI Osmo Action S1H. Now, here's the thing. This is not a traditional vlogging camera. If anything, this is really just an action camera with a really good sensor in it. It's a smaller sensor than the Osmo Pocket 3, but the image is still really, really good. Like, I've seen this camera paired with a Sony A7 IV, and the image can be graded and colored to match a Sony camera. And being that it's such a small form factor, you can take this camera anywhere and put it in a lot of situations that you wouldn't be able to put the other cameras in. So you have some versatility and you have some ability to be really creative with this camera. The microphone built into this camera is actually really, really good. The attachments that you can get for it make it a very versatile camera. So the sky's the limit when it comes to your creativity. And I think the Osmo Action 4 is a great camera for the kind of creators who want to do a lot of action stuff that you don't want to use traditional cameras for. Coming in at $489, the DJI Osmo Action 4 is a really good value option for somebody who's looking to do some adventure content and some vlogging. And just like the DJI Pocket 3, it's a really versatile camera that you can pretty much use in most situations that you wouldn't normally take a mirrorless camera in. Links in the description for this particular camera. You can also find it on Amazon. Lastly, one of my favorite cameras I wanted to save for the end of this list is really just your mobile device. Cameras today on mobile devices are so advanced and they're just great. They're solid performers. This is the iPhone 14 Pro Max. It has all the different lenses on it, but more importantly, all the apps that you can use on your phone to edit your images, your videos, and get it up and published. You can't match that with any of the other cameras that are listed. When it comes to the other cameras, you have to put together a workflow. So it'll go from your camera, take that SD card, import all the footage, then you're going to edit it on your favorite editing suite, and then you're going to publish it. With your phone, everything's just built into the device. So as soon as you finish capturing, you're already editing on an app. And one of my favorite apps to edit in with my phone is CapCut. It's kind of the gold standard when it comes to editing reels and social media content. As much as I have all of these nice fancy cameras, it's always so easy to just pull out your phone and just start recording and creating content. You have your rear facing camera, your front facing camera. You have a wide variety of options when it comes to your camera settings. It's all at the tip of your fingers. So I highly recommend, before you go out and get a nice fancy camera like any of the ones listed, get really good at creating content with your phone and use those cameras that are listed to level up your content creation game. So there you have it. Those are my 7 favorite cameras, including your mobile device, for new creators who want to get started on a budget. Once again, links to each of the cameras listed in today's video can be found in the description section below. If you make a purchase, it provides me a very tiny commission that doesn't cost you anything, but it helps to keep this channel funded, and it helps me to make some money because YouTube doesn't pay me and I got to make money somehow. Thank you so much for watching. I hope this video was helpful to you. If it was, make sure to give it a like. Stay tuned for more videos like this one. Until next time, I'm Kevin Lee.